So they get him on these charges as a result of this raid, which is Jan 6 related only. And then they take him to trial on this, but not on Jan 6.
Correct. So this was, what we call the fruit of the poison tree. And this was, what I believe to be an unlawful warrant that was served on somebody over 2 misdemeanors in a completely separate jurisdiction, signed off by a non-constitutional judge, a non-Article 3 judge. Magistrates aren't in the U.S. Constitution, in order to take away his Fourth Amendment rights and allow a generalized search with no specific targets in mind, cutting off the cameras so that there's no oversight and accountability for what took place during the search. And then you'll see why all this is relevant when we get into the evidence stuff.
He goes to trial. When did his trial start and how long did it last?
I believe it was in December of 2022, and it lasted about 7 days.
Okay.
I know there was one weekend because I ended up going up to my buddy's house an hour north of there. So yeah, I think it was 7 days.
Okay. Outcome is conviction, obviously, but what were the evidentiary issues that arose during the trial?
So during the opening arguments, Jeremy's attorney had said that we are going to show you that the FBI planted evidence against Jeremy Brown. Like I said, the 2 gun charges, that's kind of irrelevant here because he wasn't really necessarily challenging those. But getting into the grenades and the classified CD are the 2 things that we need to focus on here. When they went through the grenades and he was found guilty of the grenades, he was found not guilty of the CD. And that's pretty important. That's pretty important for this. There were 4 counts relating to the CD, and all 4 of those counts, he was found not guilty. When it comes to the M67 grenades, they sent them off to forensics to have these grenades looked at. They found textile fibers in the tape. They found human, I don't know if it was human hair and pet hair, I believe, on the tape. They found fingerprints and they found DNA. None of those pieces of evidence matched anything relating to Jeremy Brown. They took samples of all his carpet, of all his, anything that was textile in his home and in his RV. They took hair samples from Jeremy, from his girlfriend, from his dogs, from his cats, all of that. None of that matched. They took all their fingerprints. None of that matched. And they checked their DNA. None of that matched. Ironically, they didn't go beyond that. They didn't check anybody that was on the scene, anybody that might have handled them. None of that was checked, but they did check Jeremy, and there was absolutely no match whatsoever. So then throughout the trial, they bring on all these experts in the military and logistics in the military, and they talk about these grenades and how M67 frag grenades in the military are tracked by lot size, by lot number. It's not individually tracked, but it's tracked as like 40,000 grenades were made in this lot, and this is where they went throughout their lifetime. And it's called a Dodik report. And they brought this Dodik report and said, hey, look, these grenades were in Iraq and Afghanistan. Oh, Jeremy was in Iraq and Afghanistan as a Green Beret. Of course he was. Everybody that served from 2001 till just recently had been to either Iraq or Afghanistan for the most part, especially if you're in a Victor unit or anything like that. But they never went as far as trying to line up the dates and the times to which they were over there. Here's another thing that's I don't think they emphasized enough during the trial. When you are deployed, and I've been deployed a couple times, when you come back home from a combat zone, before you get on a plane to go back to the United States, you go through customs. And when I say customs, it's like customs times 1,000 compared to what we're used to.
I guess the punchline is you're not sneaking through with 2 live grenades in any realm of the universe. You're not getting on a plane.
You're not sneaking through with 1 live round. That big, a 5.56 round, 3 inches. You're not sneaking in with a round, nonetheless, a 3 or 4 pound grenade. It's not happening. They go through everything.
As you're talking and you're saying, like, yeah, he was in Afghanistan, he was in Iraq. None of his DNA was on the grenade, but it could have been he wrapped it when he was in Iraq and then took it back from there, and that's why it's got other people's DNA, other people's pet hair, animal hair from wherever. One question I believe I forgot the answer. When did he reveal the recordings of being approached by whomever in respect of the charges and the trial? It was before all of them, right?
This was before the raid. Like this, okay. when he released the FBI recordings, he wasn't on their radar. Okay. Like he wasn't being,
and it was post January 6th, because he obviously felt that this was a made it happen on purpose, and he had some evidence of advanced knowledge of authorities of something going to happen or them going to do something. Then they target him. And they target him with extreme prejudice, allegedly, with bogus charges, an abusive raid, and then arguably planting of evidence being the 2 grenades for which he was convicted.
Yes. And on misdemeanor charges with no violence whatsoever, and misdemeanor charges in a permitted area. He was permitted to be there. They were permitted to have access to that area.
And they only charge. I'm gonna just double check a question as to when he was charged, because some people might have, well, charged versus arrested. Okay. The trial itself was in what jurisdiction? Was it in Florida or was it?
Yeah, middle district of Florida in Tampa. Yeah.
Okay, so he does the trial, and this is the evidence with the 2 grenades for which they convict him and sentence him.
Correct. So there's a couple other things that were interesting about the grenades. First, the customs. It's very, very difficult to, bring grenades back, bring anything back. There's dogs that search your gear, explosive ordnance dogs, individuals that go through every single piece of equipment, every single thing. If you have magazines, they check to make sure your magazines are empty. If you have grenade pouches, that they're empty, your sea bag is dumped out and every piece of clothing is gone through. If you have boxes, you have to unlock them and open them up. You're not sneaking 2 grenades through there. It's very unlikely. Jeremy gets back to the US, and the morning of the morning that the FBI showed up at his house, there's this woman named Kathy Chamberlain, who was his campaign manager when Jeremy ran for Congress. And she was talking with Jeremy that morning. And Jeremy told her, I think today is the day that they're going to show up. There had been some conversations beforehand where, the FBI was alluding to a search. And Jeremy had said, I think today is the day they're going to show up. When people think of special forces, they always think of, these run and gun guys like the movies and all this stuff. These are incredibly intelligent people. These are people that have mindsets and thoughts beyond our comprehension in terms of, tactics and everything else. If he knew that the FBI was coming, he would not have had, and he actually did have grenades. They would not have been sitting on his flak jacket in 2 pouches in his RV out in the open for anybody to see.
It's an orgy of evidence, Brian.
Yes.
Straight out of Minority Report. The judge, incidentally, her name is Susan C. Bucklew, appointed by Bill Clinton. So that's, at least if I haven't made a mistake, that's the judge, to explain maybe a few things here. How long was he sentenced to?
I believe 7 years.
And he's still there, rotting away. He knew it's coming. He knew the raid was coming. Allegedly has 2 live grenades. How the hell he got them, nobody knows. How the hell everybody's DNA and pets, other than his own, makes... The textile means what exactly?
Fibers.
Okay. No DNA evidence connecting him to those things. They put him on the grass. They take their pictures. They get all the evidence, the smoking gun, take him to trial, convicted, 7 years. And so now what's the status now?
So I mean, he's still he's appealing it. He's still going through the process. They had moved him up to DC for his J6 case, the 2 misdemeanors in DC. When those were pardoned, those actually did get pardoned, I believe. And so they moved him from there. He's, I guess, in transit back to Florida, I guess, but he's currently in Kentucky, in a prison in Kentucky with, I think it's Darren Ball, I think is another one of the J6ers that's been arrested and is in Kentucky. And there's a lot of controversy around him too. A lot of controversy around him. Apparently the guards beat him to the point where he has like teeth that came through his face from the beatings, and they're trying to keep him locked up so he doesn't get out there. And this is the belief of people in his network. They don't want it out there. What they did to this guy, Darren Ball. I think it's Darren Ball. Don't quote me.
It might be Daniel Ball.
Daniel Ball,
yeah.
Excuse me.
He was involved in Jan 6, key points, involved in he was accused of throwing an explosive device into a tunnel. I'd love to know what that explosive device was. He's receiving a 5-year probation sentence for unrelated crimes when he was arrested for his actions on January 6th. I mean, I didn't realize. I had on Chance Upmore, who reached out to me, says, I've got incidental felony charges resulting from their misdemeanor raid on my place, drugs and firearms. There's a bunch of them, and there's still a bunch that are currently locked up that have not gone under the radar, they have not been detected because some people don't appreciate that this is going on, and then others say, well, all right, if they got them on other crimes, they don't appreciate the fruit of the poison tree. I've seen a lot of concern on the internet that people suggest they're trying to end Jeremy Brown's life through horrible conditions, putting him in shit spots. I mean, I don't know what a prison in Kentucky is like compared to a prison in Florida. You're deeper in the weeds. What are your thoughts on whether or not it's they hope something bad happens to him?
So he was pretty content as you can be in prison, but in the prison in Florida. I remember specifically when he had first initially gotten transferred to the new prison that he was at long-term in Florida, his girlfriend had told me that it's a much better facility. They actually get real food and, that kind of stuff. So where he's at in Kentucky right now, from what I hear, it's heinous conditions. It's absolutely atrocious. There's actually calls, I have it posted on my X, for people to go out there and alert the fire chief, the fire inspector, to violations, fire code violations in the prison right now, which I'm sure we could probably find in any Bureau of Prisons facility. But yeah, they're not good conditions. The other thing that's concerning is a lot of people are talking about the whistleblower, the DHS FBI thing. When Jeremy was on my podcast last year, he was talking about another charge, one of the other charges against him, a classified document that he had in his possession. And I'll explain to you in a minute, like how that was not a classified document. But in that podcast, he alluded to that document having incriminating information about the Obama administration committing treason during the Bo Bergdahl rescue mission. Now, I don't know the specifics about it. Jeremy didn't get into the specifics about it, but I know there was a lot of controversy around that operation when it took place. And it was really bizarre how a Green Beret operation, they had cameras on the ground in Afghanistan to document this for the public. You have a camera on the ground as the Blackhawks are flying overhead, and the camera's on the ground with Taliban people. So I don't know if the Taliban documented it and then gave it to the US to say, hey, this is our propaganda video. I don't know. But a lot of strange circumstances around that. And Jeremy seems to think that there was stuff that would incriminate the Obama administration.
And then they claimed that it was a classified document. In reality, what he had was from what you explained to me when we spoke, was an altered template of sorts that actually contained no classified information whatsoever. And that charge was ultimately, was it dropped, or did he just not get convicted on it?
He was convicted on that.
Oh, so he was convicted on the classified documents.
Yeah. So throughout the trial, this is mind blowing to me. Throughout the trial, every time a classified documents expert would testify, the prosecution would ask all these questions about how severe it is to have a classified document, blah, blah, blah. And Jeremy's attorney would simply ask, was it a draft or was it a final document? And they would say, well, it doesn't matter either way. It's classified information. Jeremy Brown took the stand in his own defense, which is, in a criminal trial where you're facing, quite a bit of time behind bars. That's unusual. And so he took the stand in his own defense, and they started questioning him about, his attorney started questioning him about the documents. And what Jeremy had done is, when he was flying home from Afghanistan, he wanted to, expedite the paperwork when you get back stateside. And so he had his own personal computer, which is not a SIPR computer. It doesn't have secure communications. You can't do classified work on it. And so what he did is he wrote a draft template, and the template had no classified information in it whatsoever. And when he got back stateside and had access to a SIPR computer where you can send classified info, he inserted all of the classified information into the document and sent it up. The document that he had in his possession was not classified. None of the expert witnesses for the U.S. Attorney's Office and the prosecution, nobody actually did their due diligence on the information to check if any of it was actually classified or not. And I still don't know how the jury found him guilty of this. But even more concerning was the fact that the U.S. attorneys, when they found out that they'd been had and that they got punked by Jeremy on this document, that they didn't immediately dismiss those charges. The U.S. attorney had to have known, oh crap, we got caught. This is not a draft. This is not a classified document. We should dismiss these charges. And instead they let them stand, and somehow the jury convicted him of that document.
It's so effing amazing. Just to bring up the reporting, I think this was reporting from the time, give or take, where they say this guy's such a bad guy. He had a whiteboard in his property that he listed for sale. This is November 2021. And on it said, at the bottom of it, he's talking about living off the grid. Good is written in red, better is written in blue, best is written in green, on hand is written black marker. All items listed under shoot, including flashbangs, are written in black marker, indicating by his hand. Your affiant has included a zoom screen. They say he had a dry erase board that listed food, illegal explosives, and other items necessary for life off the grid. So this guy's got to be clearly a menace to society. He gets convicted on the guns, classified documents, grenades, spending 7 years. The defense to the grenades is straight up, not mine, planted evidence.
Yes.
The defense to the classified documents is it wasn't classified. It was a template that contained no classified information. And the defense to the firearms is I didn't know or don't believe they need to be registered as Second Amendment rights. Yes,
but there's a whole piece of evidence there that we're skipping over, and that's this classified CD. So during the search of his property in the RV, the FBI alleged that they found a CD that had 4 classified documents from the Bergdahl mission on it. The only picture that they have of the CD allegedly in Jeremy Brown's RV is a picture of a folder on top of a folder and a little itty bitty corner of a CD jewel case sticking out the side, maybe 1 inch by 1 inch in a triangular shape. You can't see a CD. You can't see any classified markings, nothing. The staff specialist for the FBI that took pictures of the crime scene and documented everything claims that she never saw a classified CD in there, but they charged him for this. They show up like months later. They insert into evidence a photograph of the CD by itself on a table Now, I don't remember if they alleged that that was in Jeremy Brown's property or if this was with the FBI, but either way, the table itself, the grain in the wood did not match any of the furnishings in Jeremy Brown's property whatsoever. And then further on the evidence receipt form, where they document all the evidence that was taken, you see all of the evidence that Jeremy Brown that they gathered from his property, and it's all in kind of chronological and location based order. So this is all in the RV, this is in the home, this is in the master bedroom, this is in, until you get to the very last page. It's a 3-page long receipt. On the very last page, there's one single item, the CD, all by itself. And it's completely out of, order with everything else in the report. Again, Jeremy says that was planted. I didn't have that CD. I've never seen that CD before in my life. And he was found not guilty of that. So first and foremost, who put that CD in that evidence? If that CD was there, how did it get there? And the jury found him not guilty. Did the FBI plant that? And how can you believe that the FBI would go as far as planting a CD, but they wouldn't plant the M67 frag grenades, which, by the way, the last known location of those grenades, the lot of grenades that they came from, is a black site in Kentucky. So those grenades are back stateside and could easily be transported if somebody wanted to set somebody up.
It's interesting. I mean, it is interesting how when they said they acquitted or found him not guilty on that charge, I guess they don't specify whether or not it was because it was planted evidence or they determined it wasn't classified. Like the details on why they don't retain that charge, you don't actually know. It's just that he's not found guilty on that particular charge.
Correct. But they argued throughout the case. They went through all the documents. They had, classified briefings for all the jurists to show them the classified nature of the documents. There were IED reports. The trip report was the last document. There were IED reports, a couple after action reports and stuff like that were classified on the CD. And so they made it perfectly clear that the CD did in fact contain classified information, but he was found not guilty of it.
Interesting. And his defense was, I never had it. I don't know how it got there.
Correct.
Okay, and that defense didn't work for the grenades because the grenades are big, bad, and scary. Where the hell do you get grenades anyhow? Like, having never been, you don't get them in Army surplus. They were, in fact, bona fide live grenades. It's not like they were Army surplus refilled or something.
Nope, they were live grenades. And like I said, Jeremy had at least some preclination that they were going to show up that day to raid his house. And he did not even attempt to hide them. I mean, if I knew the FBI was coming to raid my house, I'd be like, what do I have in here that could be used to incriminate me? I got a joint on my table. I better move that,
And they disabled all security cameras, so nobody knows what they did while they were there.
Yep.
All right. That's Jeremy Brown's situation, and obviously not been covered by the pardon. So he's going to be sitting there rotting away for another 6 years. I don't know how it works if you get 80% of time served and whatever, but
can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please.
So when Jeremy Brown took the stand, and this is really important because the jury asked to hear this again. When Jeremy took the stand, they played a clip of Jeremy's first phone call with his girlfriend when he was in prison. And, she called and he says, well, how bad is it? What did they take? And she started listing all these things that they took. And she said grenades and kept going. And Jeremy didn't immediately respond to that. And so the U.S. attorneys played that for the jury and said, this proves that Jeremy Brown knew the grenades were there and therefore he's guilty of this. Now, what they didn't play for them was later on in that conversation, about 10, 15 minutes later, they talk about having to explode live ordnance. And Jeremy says, what do you mean explode live ordnance? And she says, the frag grenades. He says, what the hell are you talking about? Frag grenades? I don't have any frag grenades. He does airsoft. All right. He plays airsoft and goes out in the woods and, does manly shit. Right. So he had airsoft grenades. He had, other types of legal grenades, like toys, essentially, And so when he saw grenades, that's what he was thinking. They took like my airsoft grenades or whatever it may be.
Yeah, just so everybody understands, there's a legit airsoft grenade. It explodes and it sends little pellets. And if they nail you, then you have to say, I'm out, and you come back for the next round.
Exactly. So he had those. And so when he first heard that, that's all he was thinking was they took, airsoft grenades. And then when she said live ordnance or, they had to destroy the frag grenades, he said, what do you mean frag grenades? And so that was deceptive as hell. Now, what's important about that is when the jury was deliberating, they actually came back out and asked to listen to that clip again. So that clip had a key influence on their decision to convict him on those grenades.